Pretty much everyone who believes Spider-Man 3 is the worst of the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy likes to blame the studio for forcing Venom on Raimi, who neither liked nor understood the character. And while I do agree that trying to do everything this movie did with Venom in just one movie was a bad idea, there are still lots of problems in this movie that have absolutely nothing to do with the inclusion of Venom. Harry Osborn's magical amnesia going from sadistic manipulator to tortured fallen friend who sacrifices himself to save Spider-Man with barely any time to breathe, the Butler deciding for some reason to keep the knowledge that Norman Osborn died at his own hand a secret for years, bringing in Gwen Stacy for some reason, I guess to add stakes to MJ and Peter's relationship, even though MJ ran out on her fiancé on her wedding day, so we know her relationship with Peter, who she left her fiancé for, is pretty solid. We don't need or want a love triangle at this point. The Sandman now being the guy who killed Uncle Ben instead of Lance Bass, that's actually my least favorite part of this movie. Uncle Ben's killer really needs to be someone Peter had the opportunity to stop and chose not to. If it's some dude he never met before, that muddles the whole with great power comes great responsibility thing, and I hate it. And speaking of Sandman, his daughter is sick and he becomes a burglar to help her, I guess. I didn't think I would ever say this, but Batman and Robin handled this subplot better than this movie. I feel bad for Victor Fries with the loss of his life. I feel nothing with Sandman and his daughter, probably because this movie also has to work in a lot of scenes with Venom and Harry Osborn, so it doesn't have time to focus on Sandman's sick daughter. So yeah, Venom is a problem in this movie, but certainly not the reason this movie fell apart. This movie is very crowded, with a lot of stuff pushing other more important elements of the film out of the way, and Raimi really needed to look at everything he was doing and get rid of some stuff to make it a less crowded movie. I've seen other people suggest their own versions for this movie without Venom, but that was never an option. Over the years, there's been this narrative that the studio are the villains for telling Raimi what to do, and I'm sorry, but that's what a boss does. If your boss tells you to do something and you say no, they fire you and get someone else to do it. If Raimi was independently funding this movie, he could have done whatever he wanted, but the people telling him to put Venom in the movie were the ones signing the checks. So Raimi should have taken those orders, even if he didn't agree with them, and did the best movie he could have done with what he was ordered to do. I don't know exactly what the studio told him to do, but if it was me, I would have tried to meet them halfway. I'm Sam Raimi, I don't like Venom, I much prefer the 1960s Spider-Man villains, but you're the boss, how about we introduce the symbiote, it bonds with Peter, and over the course of the movie, he becomes more unpleasant. Aunt May, MJ, even Robbie and Jonah are becoming concerned with how Peter is acting. And then he realizes this is not who he wants to be. You get the scene in the church bell tower where he rips the symbiote off, and then we don't see it again for the rest of the movie. And then the climax is him going off and fighting the main bad guy of the movie without the symbiote's help. And then he makes up with his friends and family for his behavior. Then you do the Venom story in Spider-Man 4. I don't know if the studio would have been happy with that. Maybe not. They might have actually wanted Eddie Brock with Monster Face like the movie we got. I don't know. But if I was told to do Venom, this is the best way to go about that, I think. So let's assume the studio would have been okay with this. Next, I would get rid of Gwen Stacy, who is just here so the movie can stir the pot on Peter and MJ's relationship. I'll confess, from the 1960s Spider-Man stuff that I've read, I actually prefer Gwen Stacy over Mary Jane Watson. Sorry, MJ lovers, sorry, it's nothing personal. But in this movie, Gwen is a nothing character. You can still put a strain on Peter and MJ's relationship. MJ is frustrated because her career is in the pits, she and Peter are living in a crappy apartment, his life is in danger every night. That stuff can still be an issue between these two, and with Peter's actions being influenced by the symbiote, he can become angrier over the course of the film, but we don't need a love triangle here. And I would keep pretty much everything with Eddie Brock in the first half of the movie, minus him being creepy with Gwen Stacy, since she won't be in this movie. He works at the Bugle, he's been edging Peter out on some recent jobs, this is cutting in on Peter's ability to pay rent, Peter finds out one of Eddie's recent pictures is a fake, the symbiote is pushing Peter anyway, so Peter exposes Eddie. Now Eddie can never work in this town again. He's humiliated, and then we don't see him again in the rest of the movie. You can open Spider-Man 4 with Eddie in the church getting the symbiote as Peter removes it, but in Spider-Man 3, we can trust our audiences are smart enough to figure out he'll be back once he gets fired and disappears from the movie. Next, I would get rid of Sandman, who is easily the worst part of this movie. Thomas Hayden Church is fine, but the character is just the worst. You've already been building up Harry's turn to the dark side for 2 movies now, and you've been forced to introduce the Venom subplot as well. Raimi should have swallowed his pride, choked on the rinds, the lack thereof would have left him empty inside. Sorry, I was caught in a loop there. Raimi should have realized that Harry finally becoming the New Goblin, or whatever you want to call him, New Goblin is a terrible title, and Peter dealing with his own inner darkness, that was more than enough for a movie. When you narrow your focus like that a little bit, you can more clearly see a parallel between Harry and Peter. Peter has this darkness from an external entity, the symbiote, that almost consumes him, but he defeats it. Harry has this darkness from an external entity, the Goblin formula that he ingested off-screen near the end of Spider-Man 2, that actually did consume him. That sounds pretty good on paper. That leaves us with one villain, some surmountable relationship problems, something of a parallel arc between Peter and Harry, and if you want to further the drug metaphor, early in the movie, Dr. Connors Connors could offer a way to get the symbiote off of Peter, and he says no, even when he's starting to know that it's no good for him. Maybe in this instance, instead of Peter coming to Dr. Connors as Peter Parker, he could come to him as Spider-Man, something like that. Then later you get the church scene after Peter feels he's gone too far. Since I've removed like 2/3 of the movie, how do we stretch what's left into a feature-length piece? Alright, if you're gonna bring the symbiote from space, don't have a meteor, I don't know science, you know what I mean. Don't have the space rock bring the slime into the park and then have it crawl onto Spider-Man. I know this is minor and I know why they did it, since Raimi wanted to do these other characters, so let's quickly get the symbiote in there even if it's sloppy. No, let's bring John Jameson back for a recent incursion in space. I haven't seen an episode of the 90s animated Spider-Man series in probably 10 years or more, but that explanation of where the symbiote comes from works perfectly fine if you're unable to do Battleworld and a crossover with dozens of other superheroes. That's our entry for the symbiote, and if you want a big action scene at the beginning of the movie, Peter can save the shuttle and let it down easy in the Hudson Bay or something like that. And J. Jonah still hates Spider-Man, maybe he blames him for the shuttle nearly crashing, but this is where the slime gets on Peter. Next, you don't have to immediately open with Harry attacking Peter in the streets. Slow burn, baby, go back to your horror roots, Raimi. Harry playing mind games with Peter in the last act of the movie is weird and I cannot take it seriously, but if he was more of a menacing character, yeah, he would be super creepy, which is what works for Raimi's wheelhouse, I think. As far as Peter knows, Harry isn't a supervillain. That's only something the audience figured out when Harry was all smiles at MJ's wedding after he discovered his father's lab. So let Harry toy with Peter with some close call attacks from afar, and then have Peter find out at the end of Act 1 that Harry is the new Goblin. You could throw in some scenes of Harry coming to visit Aunt May or MJ when Peter isn't home. Hey, is Peter here? Oh, okay, just tell him I stopped by. It's creepy, you're not sure if Harry's going to attack civilians just to get at Peter, but he has no beef with these ladies, he probably still likes them. It's not their fault Peter killed his dad as far as he knows. I don't usually talk character designs, but bleck. I know people didn't like the mask from the first movie, but what was wrong with the glider? Why do this thing? Reuse as much of the first costume as you can here. The mask you probably do have to trash. I didn't hate it for a long time, but then I saw Alex Ross's designs for a possible live-action costume, and I thought it looked great. I don't know what your in-story reason would be for Norman or Harry to put this mask on, but I liked it. So anything other than the design the movie used would be fine. Since we don't have Sandman for Harry and Peter to team up against in the end, we actually commit to Harry turning to the dark side. Or at least he goes further than mind games with Peter's relationship while eating pie. Maybe he unintentionally recreates the choose hero scenario from the first movie, but it's bigger, like a train or something is about to run off the tracks into a neighborhood and kill hundreds of people. Peter reaches Harry. This super enhancer formula isn't you, Harry. It turned your dad into a killer. He almost killed you and MJ. This will kill you too. And instead of Harry dying in a team up against other villains, he dies stopping himself from becoming what his father became. Aw, he did become half of his father. The good half, not the deranged half. I know this is shorter than my normal fix videos, but I don't think fixing this movie needed to be a complicated process. Less is more. There's a lot of clutter here, but there's an actual movie underneath it all. So I hope you guys liked this video, and if you did, I do this kind of thing all the time. So check out the other videos where I do unsolicited fixes on various movies, and be sure to check out my other videos. Until next time, have a great day.